Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the JS Mindset Weekly Call. My name's Denny. Today is Saturday, April 10th, 2021. Joining me on the call today are Bill Holter, Jim Sinclair, and my buddy Dave. This last week on the farm, we had one heck of a hailstorm, and it was as bad as what I'd have ever seen here. About 2 o'clock in the morning, we were awakened by hail hitting the windows so hard that we were convinced they would be broken, so we moved into the center of the room. And that pounding lasted a full 10 minutes. In the aftermath, the next morning, we could see the damage of our neighbors and the foliage, and suffice to say that roofers and landscapers and remodeling contractors in the center of our state are going to be quite busy for some time. And homeowners are going to be dealing with their insurance carriers for months. Many of us feel that we're about to be hit by one heck of a financial hailstorm. And the question is this: are there any contractors available to fix things after the debt storm hits us? Is there any insurance company that will mitigate the damages? I just don't think that's possible anymore. As impossible as it will be for people to believe, this free lunch political giveaway for anybody and everybody is about to come to an end, and I'm very certain that it's not going to be a very happy ending. Today I'm going to be asking the boys questions about the future of currency. Before we get to that question and others for the boys, be aware that in our conversation today, it's very important to remember we're not giving anybody investment advice. We're very capable of that. We choose not to do that. What we're trying to do is share our own personal perspectives of the economic world. Now, you can choose to add it to your own perspective, or you can choose to ignore it. In the end, we really want you to be prepared for what might certainly be some very trying times ahead. Jim, COVID-19 pandemic seems to be the perfect excuse for central bankers and the powers that be to curtail the use of our currency. This week, I had somebody deny cash. They said, "We don't want your cash. Do you have a credit card?" Jim, I just didn't see this one coming this way, and it's going to have far-reaching consequences to privacy, banking, and our daily lives. Any thoughts?
Well, it's been a trend, okay? And the trend has come to a crescendo, as you say, by the existence of plausible reason why. Do you want to touch money? I used to be over in India in the early 80s, and I'm going to tell you that stuff's been in circulation since the time of Ramayana, the holy book. And you don't want to touch it. You want to wear gloves or have a pincher to bring it up. I mean, the stuff even smell. And there is in the minds of the obedient many a real COVID scare. That something that has been touched by someone who is infected can infect another within a certain period of time. And that clearly works against money and for computer money. And computer money, I'm not referring to Bitcoin, but I'm referring to the use of your credit card, because that's the original Bitcoin in a sense. We get on, and nobody goes shopping. We pull up Amazon, make them very rich. We order our groceries. And we pass by the grocery store, give them a call, and somebody throws a bag in the back of our car. No, we are going to be without currency, okay? Part of this new reset eliminates currency and will attempt to replace currency with an entity which will attempt to replace the short and medium-term treasury bills. It's all a plan. It's all perfect. Coincidence doesn't happen. And, what is. All we do is we have to deal with it. But that is what is taking place. And you're absolutely right. Currency's out the door.
Bill, let's talk a little bit more about currency. A couple years ago, in fact, I think it was last year, I went out to buy a piece of equipment for the farm. The guy had a bush hog, and I thought, rather than get a new one, I'll just get this one. But he only wanted cash. And when I showed up to pay him to pick up the bush hog, several of the $100 bills I brought were the old Bennies. And I think I told you boys about this once. He would not accept the old Benjamins. So I promptly went to the bank to exchange them, and
they were cooperative, but they were as suspicious of me as if I was a drug dealer. It was just an uncomfortable situation, but I got the new currency, I paid the old guy, and got my bush hog. Bill, what's going to happen? Jim says it's a thing of the past, but what happens when we don't have physical currency that can circulate in the economy for what I'm going to say, this type of transaction that takes place every day of the year?
You'll definitely see you'll see a slowdown of commerce. You'll see a slowdown. I mean, velocity is already at an all-time low, but it will even plummet velocity even further. And what you're illustrating is, it's not the black market, but it. There's all kinds of cash transactions that are done every day. I mean, somebody cuts your grass, you give them cash, and it's going to put a crimp. It will put a crimp in the system, and there will be less activity. We'll put it that way.
I had a young man come.
Everything will be known. There will be no privacy whatsoever. And if the guy who cut your grass didn't pay his taxes, he's in trouble.
I see it. You go ahead, David.
Well, I just wanted to jump in here a second because, again, this week, actually April 4th, the CDC finally came out under massive pressure from independent scientists to finally admit that the risk of getting COVID off a surface is 1 in 10,000. There are 0 confirmed surface contaminations. So this whole nonsense that they don't want to touch your money or your credit card is drivel that's been being peddled by the mainstream media. What I just told people is a fact. You could look it up. Secondly, a year ago, we went through these talks, and last summer we were talking about the shortage of coins, and oh my God. Denny, they're running psyops, and they've got people chasing their tails like scared dogs. That's what this is all about. The media worldwide is psyoping the public to pave the way to, as we're saying, grab the cash. I don't think it works, but that's what they're going to go for. This is a shutdown of all cash markets because, as you guys are saying, I was skiing the other day. A good buddy of mine came into town, came to the resort that I was at, and he happens to work at another resort. He gets a letter from his resort that says, please give my employee a discount. They did. All he needed to do was have $10, and he got to ski for the day on a $150 ski pass. He didn't have anything but a $10 bill. He had no credit cards. They wouldn't take the $10 bill. Another buddy of mine steps up and says, I'll give you the Apple Pay. We don't take that either. I happen to have a Visa card in my pocket and rescued the day so he can get through. But this whole nonsense of we can't touch cash because it could be contaminated is a media psyop. It's not factual. There are no proven surface links to contamination, and the CDC on April 4th released the statement. The New York Times covered it. And again, the public's the last to know. They're still being psyoped about this cash nonsense. So
you mean I don't have to carry my tweezer and a spray bottle of alcohol?
Right. Well, see, and again, this is interesting because the article clearly said that this mass craze of bleaching and Cloroxing everything is foolish. It's not doing anything because that's not how the virus is spreading. So, again, the public has just got to kill their TVs and learn to research and look things up because this is out of control. I mean, they're
David,
just
the whole nation is like a troop of Girl Scouts who don't want to sit on strange toilet seats. I mean, this has gone just crazy. Hey, David, while I've got you, a year ago, just about the time that the farmers were planting their crops, Dave, corn was in the low $3 a bushel range. Today, it's up 80%, David, in about a year. It's in the high $5 right now, and that's pretty much straightforward across the board, Davey, with soybeans, oats, wheats, everything's up substantially. I'm not buying that this is a demand push situation. Rather, I really think we're looking at some more than core inflation. But if that's the case, Dave, it's going to hit precious metals soon enough.
You got any perspective on that one?
Yeah, I do, Den, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is an interesting topic. First off, that inflation is everywhere. I mean, I don't care if you go to the gun store. 223 ammo is trading at over $1 a round. 22 long rifles are trading at 75 cents a round if you can get them. A friend of mine who's a skeet shooter called me from a couple states away. It says, look, I'm having problems getting 12-gauge 7-shot for skeet shooting. Anything going on up by you? Can you get some? I called my buddy who's at a gun store. He says, no, Dave, this stuff's all disappearing off the shelves as fast as it shows up. And the price is running through the roof. I talked to a buddy of mine who's a logger the other day. He's getting almost nothing more for wood than he got last year, yet the end price to the consumer is $9 for a premium 2x4, headed for $11. The price of gold started this nonsense, as we talked earlier before the show. And when I say this nonsense, go back to 1999. Gold was $275 an ounce. Somebody convinced all the central banks to get together and sell their gold. You have to ask yourself, and I always try to tell people, ask questions of yourself and then search for the answers. Who convinced these banks to dump gold? Who told them that was a good idea? Then you have to ask yourself, who bought it all? Somebody bought it all. They still have it all. And the gold that they bought at $275 and $300 an ounce is now easily $1,700 an ounce. So not only are they sitting on massive profits, but they're sitting on massive piles of gold because for the last 20 years on every pullback, they have managed to accumulate more and more and more and more. And they've done the same thing with shares of junior miners, which is the only place that there's any metal left because as Jim has described, the majors are losing mineable ounces. They can't find them. The only place that really has them is small mining operations that had done a ton of drilling and came up and had proven that they have them. And that's where all this gold is. And what they're trying to do, Denny, in my opinion, and it's not even my opinion, it's fact at this stage of the game, they had played this price suppression game because the public could see inflation in corn and wheat and in meat and in lumber, and they don't think anything of it. If they saw it in gold and they saw it in silver, that would be like screaming fire in the theater. So what they do is they make everybody who's claiming gold and silver the saviors. They make us look like dopes right now because they're running Bitcoin through the roof. They're pushing the stock market through the roof with fake trades, and we know they're fake trades because you've seen hedge funds blow up that control 40% of a company's stock and don't even own a share. So what they're doing is a smokescreen, Danny. The inflation's already here. There's nothing you could touch that is not suffering from massive inflation, and the metals will completely blow up when they shut down for lack of a better word, they shut down the computers, blow Bitcoin up, and roll out the digital currency. This game now is so easy to see. If people don't see it, they're just not paying attention.
Jim, I want to jump over to the stock market for a second. I've been perusing charts in Zero Hedge. I came across one that showed a sea of what I'm going to call central bank liquidity drowning rates to record lows. But the challenge with that is that the healthy wage growth is going on, and rising inflation expectations suggest that rates can only rise from here, but they've been pounded down. So profit growth is peaking. The markets are still risk on everywhere. They're pouring into this. The old trader perspective, what are your thoughts on this, Jim?
Well, it's the driving factor is that if rates rise, which everything you said is a valid argument for higher cost of money, the amount of debt that we've accumulated and accelerated and taken into the stratosphere can't be, by the income being received by the U.S. by the governments, it can't be serviced. So you have a rock and a hard place. on one side, you're hiding the inflation in order that the public doesn't get what's going on, and add to the difficulty of keeping rates low. And at the same time, you must keep rates low, or you won't be able to service your debt. And right now, they're winning. But the strain that they're putting on by the creation of money, by the fact that these bills, just like the Patriot bill, it's named exactly what it's not. The infrastructure bill, we're being told now that infrastructure is daycare. Oh, well, maybe it is. Maybe I'm just too old to understand. But that doesn't look like a road or a highway to me. So the answer is that you have a war going on between the forces of economic reality and the needful for the political condition of cheap money and ongoing prosperity as guaranteed by modern monetary theory that says you can build businesses and expand economies on massive debt. Who's going to win the war? Well, I think it's all going to go up in smoke. And, what is a bond worth that isn't being serviced? And the eventuality of all that might be rates as high as we saw on the advent of Volcker's smashdown from 14 7/8 on 10-year.
Bill, are you still with us?
Yeah, my phone just shut off.
Well,
I'm back.
I love that phone. I wish I could control it for you. Hey, the Fed says that they're prepared to let inflation take off, which they've never really done. They've got this dual mandate, one for full employment and one to keep inflation around 2%. Well, now they say, to hell with this. We're just going to let inflation take off because we've got to kickstart the economy after the pandemic. Jim just sort of gave us a foreshadow of this. But, Bill, this cannot end well if they are going to kickstart the economy and give up on inflation.
Okay. The Fed is not saying that they're going to let inflation take off. What they're saying is inflation's not a problem, and if it does get above 2% for a little bit of time, it's only transitory, so it's not a problem. The reality is they have to have inflation. If there's no inflation, and when I'm saying inflation, the definition of inflation is the increase of money supply. That's already happened. They need the effects of that inflation to take place. In other words, they need prices to rise. And again, it goes back to Richard Russell's inflate or die. The only way they can the system can continue is with inflation. They have to have prices across the board inflate, because that's versus the debt outstanding. In other words, the debt is too large on a ratio basis versus the system. So you have to make the system appear larger. And that's what we're watching. We're watching the everything bubble. The problem is when bubbles burst, the debt still remains, and the asset values or pricing are far lower. I mean, this is of their own doing, and they're aiming a double-barrel shotgun at their own feet by wanting inflation. But they have to have the inflation in order for the system to continue. Otherwise, it implodes.
David, last week you mentioned the situation in retail rental office space such as malls. I did a lot of research going back to see what the commercial real estate national firms, what was going on with them. Dave, this quarter alone, occupancy is down another 11%, and it's been double digits for a while. And so it seems to be going through this half-life process of, well, actually not half-life, but 10% life
process where they're losing 10% every quarter. Office space is in a similar pickle because companies have discovered they don't need a large office footprint anymore. And we've talked about that also. But I'm beginning to hear the small hole in the real estate balloon letting out air. And I just don't know how anybody can plug that hole. David, in the past, there's always been somebody to step up in the subprime process where all that debt was rated AAA. You know, the Fed stepped up and started buying all that crap, and their balance sheet went from $750 billion up to $7-8 trillion. Dave, is there anybody left to plug this hole?
No, there's not, Denny. And I'd like to just explain something to listeners here. And this is a personal experience. I was hardcore into real estate in the early 80s. The market was booming. Things were going wonderfully. I had been using leverage quite heavily to acquire a very good-sized real estate portfolio. 1987, I was on my way to Hawaii on a windsurfing trip with a good buddy of mine. The day the stock market crashed, I'm in the air. I look at my buddy and I say, thank God I don't have anything to do with that stock market. Shortly thereafter, I immediately learned the lesson that when something goes wrong one place, it quickly goes wrong every place. Think of it like a wildfire burn in California. Well, it's over in my neighbor's yard. I'm not really worried about it. Yeah? Well, you better start worrying about it today. I learned that lesson very quickly. My attorney at the time was adamant that I was in a very bad situation, and rather than digging a hole, that I should immediately cut my losses and run. And I was like, there's not a chance that's happening, man. I've spent a long time putting this whole thing together, and to think that I'm pulling the plug is just craziness. I spent 4 years throwing good money after losing project after losing project. I have learned since then, hit the bid. This is not getting better. What's happening in commercial real estate can't happen in commercial real estate and not get everybody else sick. Commercial real estate represents too big a chunk of money. And as you're saying, the offices are going to go, even let's say a lot of, J.P. Morgan came out and says, well, we're only going to use 60% of our office space. Or, the next guy says we're only going to use 50% of our office space. What happens to the other 30, 40, 50%? Our commercial mortgage industry can't eat that kind of a price reduction. Think of what it would do to every loan that stayed. Think about all the loans that are still on the books. As these malls go bankrupt and as these office buildings go bankrupt, that will continually drive down the price of the next piece that's going to be sold. So as you get into a cascading commercial real estate process, how does that not spill over to the residential real estate market? How does that not spill over into the banking industry? It is, they think coronavirus was contagious. Wait till they see how contagious this mess becomes, because it's all based on leverage. All this commercial real estate, the REITs for years, everybody was drooling over, I've got my REITs, and commercial real estate market's solid, and everybody pays the rents in the commercial real estate markets. Hit the bid is my advice to anybody who thinks that they want to get out, because that bid is going to disappear, especially if the World Economic Forum is correct and the next big event for the world is going to be a cyber attack that takes everything down. Again, whether it does or doesn't happen, commercial real estate market's a canary in the coal mine, Denny. That's my belief. I could back that up. The New York Times did an article this week about the commercial market, because that is going to put pressure on taxes, because all these major cities generated all their major revenue by taxing all these massive high-rises. So if they can't tax the massive high-rises, who do they turn to next? Residential real estate. That's all you need to remember. So that probably sums it up, Danny. People could follow the line of thinking on that, but that's what's going to happen here. In the rest of the world, Australia has its own real estate problems. They've had a real estate bubble going for so long. I can't believe that that's really going on as long as it has. And whatever happens here in the United States is going to be contagious worldwide, is my guess. So, bad. Hit the bid, get out if you can.
I've got a couple questions left, and they'll probably take us the distance, but I'll start with Jim. Jim, when we look at gold, there's leading indicators and then there's lagging indicators. And what's happened is gold was always a leading indicator. When we sensed inflation, we would see that gold would trickle up and the smart boys would go over there, whether it was just the safe trade or whatever. And then gradually, because somebody was wanting to acquire gold, that gold was no longer that trade. It appears that Bitcoin has taken its place. But Jim, the question is, how much longer, and we've asked this question week after week, how much longer can gold take this bridesmaid role before it becomes the bride?
Well, in order to accomplish what both Bill and David have just discussed eloquently, the alarm system had to be taken out of the economic function. None of this could have been accomplished in terms of the enormous expanse of the money supply if the alarm gold went off. There used to be ranges in currencies, and a currency wasn't supposed to go above or below a certain band. But what was the band? The band was an alarm system. The alarm system had to go away. And if you examine all markets, the alarm systems have been taken off. When gold was first legal to trade, it had a $10 range maxed. Because we've got a cash market today, there is no shutdown in gold per se, as the cash market is free to do whatever it wishes, and the exchanges have widened out even their points when you only sit back and do not trade so you can think about it, which does nothing whatsoever. These are alarm systems, and what you're looking at is the thinking that you're looking for the alarm to go off. Well, if you want to create the environment that Bill explained rather magnificently and brilliantly, Bill, if I might say so, of the size of the economy on one side of an equation, you have to kill the alarms. So what you're seeing in modern monetary theory is an alarmless system, which when it goes up will not let you know. It's just going to go and explode. And the Bitcoin is extraordinarily popular, but its size is really not as popular as its price. If the bit market capitalization is correct in an article that I just read, at $2 trillion, and of course it's come up from nothing, that really, in today's world, is only part of one recent bill passed for COVID, in which only 9% went for COVID. That means that $2 trillion was pork. The Bitcoin market is getting more popular because of price than it is reality. And if, in fact, David is correct, which he is, that the greatest risk we have is a cyber attack, not a nuclear attack, and certainly not Russian or Chinese boots on Main Street, then Bitcoin disappears in 1 second. And regardless of your thought that it can't be hacked, which of course nothing in computers is hack-free, and you think the banking system set up for it is impervious to corrupt, all you have to do is pull the plug. And if the comment that to run a $2 trillion market right now is using the amount of electricity that London uses, then what do you think if this thing continued to grow? It would blow apart the Greens' position completely. So you can expect now, because of your search for an alarm and not finding it, that things will happen in one day. They're going to come out of the blue. and they're going to take everybody by complete surprise, and they'll have no ability to hit any bid or to sell anybody a Bitcoin at $100,000 for air. I think that answers the question.
Wow. Bill, you have shared with the three of us some very interesting information about cryptos, and not just Bitcoin, but cryptos as a colony. That market cap for cryptocurrencies went above $2 trillion this week. The European Central Bank came out and just basically said, you can't deal with this because it's not money. Bill, I find that so interesting because that has been the go-to substitute where gold was always there before. Now it's Bitcoin. I'd just like your perspective of what's taken place this week from the European Central Bank, and then also the cryptos blasting above $2 trillion. Bill?
There goes the phone.
I don't know. Bill, are you on mute?
Did you ask, is Bill a mute? I've never heard him a mute.
Oh, God. You guys are putting words in my mouth. I get in trouble. Well, did any one of you want to take a swing at that? Jim, you want to take a swing at that? All of a sudden, we've got cryptos at $2 trillion. $2
trillion is not a lot. You know, what was the size of the COVID bill? And only 9% went to COVID, which means more than $2 trillion was pork. We're in a strange world today. Everybody goes, whoa, $2 trillion in Bitcoin. That's not what's making Bitcoin attractive. 60,000 is what's making Bitcoin attractive. And do you think for a moment that is a free market? You're out of your mind, okay? And it's in a way to take the alarm for gold away from the sight of the public, put up some other piece of junk that has never been around in history and therefore is not associated with any concept called inflation. It's actually brilliant. But short term.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Bill. You should hear what we said.
Denny,
are you in the middle? You're in the middle of the question.
You got the question, Bill, but we
okay.
have a dead phone.
Oh, and Denny.
Yeah, this is Denny. I'm back.
Where did you go?
We're talking about
my phone infected his.
You know what? I'm holding Bill. This recording is still all going, so don't say anything you don't want the good Lord to hear. Jim, you were talking. It's the Matrix. I have no idea what ground we've covered at this point. Of course, Bill dropped off first.
We talked about $2 trillion not being an outstanding factor, but $60,000 for a piece of air is outstanding. And Bitcoin is a replacement for the alarm system gold would be about inflation because Bitcoin goes to the moon, but that doesn't say anything because Bitcoin hasn't been here before and there is no relationship. So it's a brilliant move to keep people's attention off gold while you keep your foot on it and inflate the dickens out of the economy.
Okay, so we got an email. It was a well-written, well-thought-out email regarding Bitcoin. Did not disagree with our thought that Bitcoin basically is digital air. He mentioned immediately after that, however, Bitcoin is, as he put it, it's a marker. In other words, there's perfect accounting for it. The problem is, what is it? I mean, you could have perfect accounting for piles of dog crap, but there's still piles of dog crap.
There we go.
So let's back up a little bit. I think it was maybe 2 months or 3 months ago, Catherine Austin Fitz did an interview. I can't remember who it was with, but they were talking about Bitcoin, and she coined the term Bitcoin jail. And her thesis was that Bitcoin is attracting all kinds of capital, and a lot of that capital would have gone into gold and silver, but it didn't because they've got their foot on the throats of gold and silver to keep them from rising, and they're allowing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to rise. So you're getting the momentum players come in, and they're piling in. Now, the jail part of it is when they pull the plug. Now, how do they pull the plug? Who knows? The internet goes down, cyber attacks, whatever. Who knows? But the bottom line is, you wake up one day and it's not there.
All right, so you've got $2 trillion, Bill. You wake up and that $2 trillion disappears. Is that a deflationary moment? Is that the reset moment? What happens when we lose $2 trillion that just goes up in smoke? Nobody can have access to it. They think they're billionaires.
It's not going to be just Bitcoin. I mean, you get into a cyber attack scenario, and you will see the entire credit edifice, if you will, come down. You'll see, yes, SWIFT, exactly. So SWIFT goes down. Everything stops. You have what you have, and we've said this how many years now? You're going to end up at a certain point in time, you will have what you have, and that's all you have. And you may have a statement that says you've got, $2 million in the bank, or $3 million in a brokerage account, or X amount of dollars in bonds, or what have you. The bottom line is everything's going to stop.
Denny.
David, go ahead.
I'm in 100% agreement. I'd like to jump in because I'd like to bring attention again to readers. So obviously they know we're not posting articles because, again, there's just way too much attention applied when you start posting articles. It's just as easy to tell you. Go to the Sackers website, S-A-K-E-R. These are a great piece by Pepe Escobar. You could also get it if you paid for Asian Times. It's a premium price. But in any case, the gist of it is it's all about what's going on with the SWIFT system and how Russia and China are at the point where they're ready to go around the SWIFT system is the best way to put it. That's a perfect time for a cyber event like Bill is talking about that shuts every single thing down. As we talked about Bitcoin and have over the time, what I'd like to do is just give you some bullet points to the article. You could chase it down. It's on the ECB's website. I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names, but Isabel Sanabel, who is a member of the executive board of the ECB, described Bitcoin as a speculative asset that does not meet the definition of money. She argued that Bitcoin is a speculative asset without any recognizable fundamental value, which is no stranger to wild price fluctuations. She argued that since Bitcoin is a very fragile system, this could not result in it could result in disruption in financial markets, whereas the euro is backed by the ECB, which is highly trusted. Nobody can refuse to accept euro. Bitcoin is a different matter. The punchline to this whole thing is, as John Rubini previously noted, the above comments from the establishment are not random. It is a coordinated laying of the groundwork for a move against cryptos by most major governments, which in turn is a prelude to the introduction of digital national currencies and eventually a digital global currency run by the IMF or some other monetary consortium. So again, this is more like a learning experience. If you think we're off our rockers, go research it. If you don't think we're off our rockers, then prepare for it if you have not already. Because, the handwriting's on the wall with all cryptocurrencies. We've argued for years they will not allow you to counterfeit money. They will control the money system just like they control everything else. So prepare yourself for that. This whole Bitcoin thing, again, as I've said 1,000,000 times, if you were a trader, you could have made a fortune. I'm not a trader in something that I don't believe in. I could trade something I believe in, like gold, because for 5,000 years I could prove that that's the winning side of the bet. The only thing I could prove with cryptocurrencies and hocus-pocus derivatives is you have to be a trader. You have to get in, make your money, get out like the casino, and don't ever go back in the door. So I think that's an important lesson, because when this is all said and done, gold and silver in your hand are going to be the only thing you could rely on if, in fact, the cyber shutdown occurs. Take over, Danny.
Last week, there was a shipping container or an evergreen ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal. It backed up the Suez Canal over 400 container ships. The estimate is that half of those loads, of those 400 container ships, including the one that was stuck, was produce, or was, for lack of a better word, groceries that spoiled. So here's the question. Could this possibly be a black swan event? Because they don't know who to blame. They don't know whether to blame the pilot of the ship that got, or the captain of the ship that got stuck. They don't know whether to blame the Suez Canal people itself. They don't know whether to blame the tugs. There was some evidence that the ship that got stuck was dodging some other things. This is going to be an insurance nightmare, but the bottom line is that over half of the cargo was lost. I'd just like anybody to sort of jump in here and give me some perspective. Is this not a deflationary, and could this be a deflationary event is what I'm asking.
Denny, how is the destruction of goods deflationary? Now you need more goods. That creates a scarcity of those goods, so the price of those goods is going to go higher, not lower.
I would think that the restoration of the supply chain would be disinflationary. That's where I'm going. Supply chains disrupted by whatever means, the low-cost producers in Asia and everywhere else were unable to deliver. So maybe I'm mixed up on this one, Bill. But
yeah, you got it backwards.
I got it backwards. All right.
Yeah, once the supply of something is destroyed or what have you, then think about. So you got 10 apple trees, and you're the apple producer for the area, and 7 of your 10 apple trees die. What happens to the price of apples? They go up.
No, that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is that once the market catches up, there will be immediate inflation. I agree with you there, Bill. But once the supply chain is restored, the supply is going to step up to fill the demand. And I believe that it will overcompensate, and we'll go into some sort of – the possibility is there for a deflationary event as the supply chain is restored. But I'll defer to you immediately, of course, that it's going to be inflationary. There's going to be no supply.
Bill, can I jump in?
Fire away.
Go for it. I'm in your camp, not Denny's. First off, let's take food and vegetables as an example. They don't come off a conveyor belt. And this is my argument with ammunition shortages. They come off a conveyor belt. That machine doesn't get sick. It doesn't get tired. It just keeps reloading shells as fast as they come down the conveyor belt. If you're talking food product, I don't care whether it's animals, whether it's meat, whether it's vegetables. It's not like come next week we have another harvest and we'll just fill the next boat up and send it over. And even if we did, there's only the ability to import X amount of units of anything in the world right now because of just-in-time deliveries. The grocery stores, let's say it's coming here to the United States, expected that produce to be here. And their shelves, once they go bare, are bare. And you can't bring the next boat in for, God knows, say 5 weeks, just to make up a number. So now, for the next 5 weeks, whoever has apples, oranges, pears, or whatever was on those ships, obviously is going to want premium dollars because they don't have the ability to replace the product right now, no different than a silver supplier saying, I am not letting go of my last 1,000-ounce bars of silver at $25 just because the number reads that on COMEX, because I can't restock my shelf when that happens. Bill, am I right on that?
Exactly. And while we're on that subject of silver bars, there's obviously been more information has come on both sides from John Adams and from the Perth Mint, and now apparently Kitco is in on the act with their so-called synthetic, if you will, silver. If you have read or listened to what's come out of the Perth Mint, it's infantile. And factually, there's a lot of Australians now that are pretty upset because they have gotten some silver, but it turns out they're Chinese bars. So there's definitely a supply problem. And I just heard this yesterday. Kitco's out there basically saying the same thing Perth Mint has regarding the unallocated silver. And as we've told you all along, unallocated is going to be exposed as not there.
They say it's best to apologize early and often. I was trying to set up that idea of decelerating inflation and possible deflation from an article that Tyler Durden posted by Mike Shedlock from Mish Talk. And it wasn't that we weren't going to get inflation immediately. It's that the aftermath is everybody rushes back in to fill the void would be a deflationary event. And I apologize how clumsy I was setting that up. But Dave and Bill, you are right. This is going to be, they're going to hold on to their kumquats for the top dollar. The question is what happens afterwards if they can refill that hole in the ocean that was created. David, have you got anything else? Anything else you want to share?
Yes, I don't think that hole could be filled. See, this is what I'm getting to. Everything, the shortage of everything right now is still being blamed on the pandemic. I mean, I can't believe it. Right down to up until a week ago, there were no Clorox wipes on the shelves. So it's been a year. And again, the void hasn't been filled. And the price of everything from pork to meat to dairy, everything is going up. And as I see this here, we're just walking into, as we started this conversation about inflation at the very beginning question, is it's everywhere. And they're going to come up with a million excuses, just like the pandemic's been the excuse for everything that's gone wrong with the economy or everything that's gone wrong with the supply chain. It's an excuse. And again, without even getting into what did or didn't happen with the ship, what it proves is what we've said all along. If you don't have it, if you aren't growing it, if you don't know where your supply of it is coming from, then you don't know that you're going to be able to replenish your stock of meat, firewood, propane. I don't care what it is. Bill saw it in the ice storm. I mean, we see this over and over again, and the people go back to their lazy ways of, oh, geez, it's so easy. I'll just put my damn cart in the machine and I'll fill my tank up with gas. And then the reverse of it is I see my friend, he's got a $10 bill, and the mountain won't take it because they're not allowed to touch cash. This is a massive operation. This isn't some hillbilly resort. And I'm like, we're sitting here when I'm explaining the story to people, a couple guys in the bar, what's going on in this country? And I'm saying to myself, if they only knew, but it's too long a conversation to get into over a beer. What's going on in this country and what's going on in this world is a reset is occurring, massive inflation of everything's coming, and that is why they need to reset everything. And, again, Unlimited Hangout did the article on the polycybergon attack, the World Economic Forum covering it. I can only point you there because we can't keep posting this stuff because once it's posted on our site or to the Internet, it's forever got mine or somebody else's name on it, and that time has since passed is my belief. So that's my wrap-up, Dan.
Good job, David. And quite frankly, nobody will ever find out that your last name is Regan Strife, so don't worry about it, okay? All right, Bill, on to you.
No, I don't really have anything additional. I was going to tell you a transvestite story, but I think I'll pass on it.
Oh, man.
There we
no, we're not going there. We're not going there.
Okay.
Jim, how about you? What's news, and how are you doing?
Well, I've never heard a conversation among four that was as informative to me as today's conversation. Both David and Bill were absolutely brilliant. And anyone who doesn't play this over and over again to learn what they're teaching, it just doesn't deserve truth to survive the coming events. Bill's explanation of the size of the economy was totally brilliant, and the explanation by David dealing with the price of goods was totally brilliant. And I wanted to complete silence because I just wanted to listen and hear. I'm telling you, Bill, few economists have ever come up with something as clear as you did in your explanations today.
That's because they all went to high-dollar schools.
Well, hey, listen, there's only one school. It's Hard Knocks, and there's only one intelligence. That's street sense.
That's my point.
That is so true. That is so true. Well, folks, our apologies for the technical issues this week. It was certainly not intended, and I don't even know what caused it, but Bill and I certainly had that issue. All that being said, we'll be back with you next week, but in the meantime, always remember that money isn't everything. It's just that having money makes things so much easier in life. Truly, it's the people in your life that are worth $1 million, and you just can't forget to tell them so. You heard some warnings here. Prepare. There's some bad stuff coming, and we just do not know when it will hit. I think the one thing that woke me up is Jim's one statement that it could happen in minutes, and then the world changes. So with that, we'll leave you alone, and we'll talk to you again next week, same place.